talk about. So, Masonry is not a secret society. It's the oldest and largest fraternal organization in the world, with over 6 million members worldwide, 1 million in the United States. And we raise an awful lot of money, and we give it all away. And did this work? Okay, we'll try that. Masonry began in Europe prior to the 13th century by stonemasons, craftsmen who built the churches, the castles, the cathedrals, and important buildings. They formed guilds or unions in order to keep their crafts secure from workers who were not skilled and experienced. When the need for large buildings declined in one area, they had to move to other cities. They used a system of words and handshakes to identify themselves as competent members of their craft. And we still use some of that today. As the need for their craft declined, their membership dwindled and they started to accept non-craftsmen in order to keep their lodges active. Masonry evolved into a social and philanthropic organization meant to make its members lead a more virtuous and socially active life. The first Grand Lodge established to govern Freemasonry in England and Wales was formed in 1717 during a meeting in a pub in London called the Goose and Gridiron. At that time, there were 4 lodges in the city, but a lodge in Scotland has records to show its existence in 1599. Masonry came to America in 1733. Henry Price, an Englishman who immigrated to America in 1732, was a merchant and a tailor and an active Mason. After realizing that there were others interested in Freemasonry, he secured a warrant from England which permitted the Grand Lodge to be formed in North America. In July 1733, he declared the founding of the Mother Lodge of America in Boston, Massachusetts. This quickly grew throughout the rest of the colonies, particularly with men deemed to be in the upper classes of society. From its roots in Boston, Freemasonry began to grow after the Declaration of Independence. As most Masons now know, George Washington was a Mason and laid the cornerstone of the United States Capitol in 1793 during a Masonic ceremony. The Grand Lodge still practices cornerstone leveling, and they do about 10 or 12 of them a year. In 2007, I participated in the ceremony in Raleigh, and we leveled a cornerstone on 2 high schools. We do high schools, courtrooms, other important government buildings, and just about anything if somebody's going to build a building and they want us to do a cornerstone for them. Since its formation on the streets of Boston, Freemasonry has gone on to attract millions of men throughout the United States and has played an essential role in the development of community fundraising initiatives throughout the centuries. Freemasonry is not a religion. Although Masonry has a look of a religion, there are no priests, ministers, rabbis, or a system of clergy of any sort. Everyone is their own thinker. The initial response to Freemasonry in Central Europe, particularly in Catholic Europe, was suspicious from seeing all these men from different neighborhoods and different professions meeting in the cafes and breaking bread together and performing rituals. What could this be? Surely no good could come of this. In 1738, the Catholic Church condemned Freemasonry and has since issued about 20 decrees against the fraternity. In 1983, Cardinal Ratzinger, the future Pope Benedict XVI, reaffirmed this position. Masonry never denied memberships to Catholics. This decree has since been waived by the Catholic Church when they realized that so many of their parishioners were members of the fraternity. Upon becoming a Mason, a man assumes an obligation to live a socially acceptable and philanthropic life. Freemasonry is not a religion per se, but agnostics and atheists cannot become members. An applicant must profess a belief in a deity, a supreme being, or the great architect of the universe. Without that belief, an obligation would be worthless. This is an organization of believers. When it began on a formal basis in 1717, many historians believe that it was trying to bridge the gap between the religious civil wars which had been going on in England at that time. Catholics would get in power and beat up on the Protestants. The Protestants would get in power and beat up on the Catholics. And everyone was beating up on the Jews. So when the Freemasons were formed, they said, here is a group of men who agree that God is central in their lives. They can even agree that God compels them to do good in the community. Two of America's first presidents were Masons, George Washington and James Monroe, as were Benjamin Franklin, John Hancock, and Paul Revere. Even John Wayne. He became Mason later on. Many leading figures in the American Revolution, including John and Samuel Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and Thomas Paine, were not Masons. Of the 56 figures who signed the Declaration of Independence, 9 were Masons. And of the 39 delegates to the Continental Congress who signed the new Constitution, 13 were Mason. Many of America's notable people were Mason, including 15 of our 46 presidents. Masonry grew into what we know as a large philanthropic organization from which came the Scottish Rite and the Shriners Hospital for Children. The Scottish Rite Hospital provides orthopedic and related care for children and has at least 2 major hospitals in the southern jurisdiction, as Dallas and Atlanta, and 221 clinics around the country. The Shriners Hospital provides orthopedic and burn care for children and has 22 hospitals. The parents of these children pay nothing for their care. The Masonic Charitable Foundation is one of the largest grant-making charters in the country and builds better lives by enabling opportunity, advancing health care and education, and promoting independence for Freemasons, their families, and the wider community. Masons provide more than $3 million a day for their charities. Let's talk about the Texas Masons. Among the first Americans to migrate to Texas in 1820 were a number of Masons, which included Stephen F. Austin. Austin attempted to organize a Masonic lodge in 1828 when he and 6 other Masons met at San Felipe and petitioned the Grand Lodge of Mexico for a charter. That petition disappeared. A more successful effort occurred in the spring of 1835 when Dr. Anson Jones and 5 others petitioned the Grand Lodge of Louisiana for a charter. The Grand Master of that state, John Henry Holland, issued the dispensation, and Holland number 36 met on December the 27th, 1835. The lodge was overwhelmed by the Mexican army, which destroyed all of the records and equipment. The lodge reopened in Houston in October of 1837. Grand Lodge of Louisiana issued 2 more charters, Milam number 40 in Nacogdoches and McFarland number 41 in St. Augustine on December 1837. Delegates from these 3 lodges met in Houston to organize the Grand Lodge of the Republic of Texas. President Sam Houston presided over the meeting. Anson Jones was elected Grand Master. Between 1838 and 1845, 21 more lodges were formed and membership increased from 73 to 357. There was probably 1,100 Masons for other jurisdictions in Texas. Although only about 1% of the population were Masons, they held 80% of the Republic's higher office. All of the presidents, vice presidents, and secretaries of state were Mason. 32 governors from James Henderson in 1894 to Mark White in 1987 were all Masons. The charitable and benevolent activities fell into two categories. Before 1900, most of the money and effort was directed to education, especially in those years before the establishment of a viable public school system. The Grand Lodge established an education system founded in 1847 and appointed a superintendent of education the following year. Between 1850 and 1873, the legislature chartered 17 Masonic-sponsored schools. Texas Masons also helped establish more than 100 other unchartered schools. In addition, many of the other early public schools met in lodge buildings. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the Masons have broadened the scope of their philanthropic efforts. Those limited to the Masonic family include homes for children of Masons, homes for aged Masons, the Scottish Rite Dormitory for women at the University of Texas at Austin. Among Masonic charities serving the public are the Scottish Rite Hospital for Children and the Shriners Hospital and Burns Institutes. I'm sure most of you have seen the commercials on TV of the young boys on talking about the treatment that they've gotten and how well they've done at the Shriners hospitals. Among Masonry, like other fraternal organizations, has faced a decline in membership from the 1961 high of 245,000 to about 71,000 today. Changes in styles of living and moral values are among the reasons given for the failure to attract new members. Brother David Powell is writing a series on the East Trinity Lodge history for the Lodge's newsletter. Much of my research parallels his. This month he documents 3 sources written by early members. A book by O.L. Steger Sr. documents history of Rockwall County 1842 and 1868, known locally as the Brown Book. Articles written by Judge E.C. Heath and submitted to the Rockwall Success newspaper, and a book by Bobby Lynn Shehorn, Pioneers History of Dallas, Texas, A Masonic Perspective, 1848 to 1874. These can all be found at the Rockwall County Public Library. On July the 26, 1854, the Grand Lodge of Texas issued a dispensation to form a lodge in the village of Rockwall, Texas, located in the northwest corner of Kaufman County. Rockwall had been established 3 months before in May of 1854. The first Rockwall post office opened that same year. In 1855, each Trinity Lodge met on the first Sunday of each month, so on the first Saturday of each month. Their building was a 16 by 20 foot wooden schoolhouse that was made from rough timbers and boards. The Methodist Church met in this building on Sundays till their first church was built, called the Union Schoolhouse. It was built on 2 acres of land donated by teacher John Butler, who was the first to be made a Master Mason on December the 2nd, 1854. The lodge met there until 1859 when C.L. Jones, the brother-in-law of John O. Heath, donated lots 2 and 3 in Block S to build a new lodge on the corner of what is known as Goliad and Russ Streets. On December the 15th, 1859, the fraternity erected a hall on the north lot. They built a 2-story wooden building on the property using the top floor as a lodge room, and the bottom floor was a school taught by Brother Butler. This building was taken down in 1878, and the 2-story brick building, which stands today, was erected. Just right across the corner. Masons sold the building in 1955 and bought the 1-story building next door, which they occupy today. The brethren in Rockwall were pillars in their pioneer community, as were those in other Texas lodges. Prominent Rockwall brethren included E.P. Chisholm, a Methodist minister who settled in Texas in 1840, A physician and Church of Christ minister, Mansell W. Matthews, is reported to have commended Brother Davy Crockett from Tennessee. A veteran of the Battle of San Jacinto, Dr. Matthews attended to the wounds of Brother Sam Houston at San Jacinto during the legendary meeting with General Santa Anna, who was also a Mason through the Mexican Grand Lodge. It is said that Houston was going to execute the captured general, but Santa Anna gave Houston a Masonic handshake and his life was spared. Brother Matthews went on to become a member of the First Republic of Texas legislature. East Trinity Lodge today has many charities: dental kits for school children, Carter Blood Care, 2 blood drives a year, support for shoes for kids, a mission of the First United Methodist Church and other churches and business. This year, this mission gave over 1,400 pairs of shoes, plus socks, school supplies, and vaccinations. East Trinity provided $1,500 for this effort. Again this year, we will donate 50 complete Christmas dinners to families vetted by the Helping Hands. In the late 1980s, Worship Master Curtis Alexander suggested we give a scholarship to a Rockwall High School senior. The funds for this endeavor was raised by simply passing the hat in the lodge room, and I think it was less than $500. From that humble beginning, the scholarship program has grown to 7 $3,000 awards to Rockwall High School and Rockwall Heath High School students. To my knowledge, no recipient of these scholarships have dropped out or failed to graduate. These awards are not given to the top 10 students in the class, rather to those who show the ability and desire to learn and have a financial need. There are many notable members of East Trinity 157, including the Honorable Ralph Hall, County Judge Durwood Wimpy, and Reverend M. L. Jones. Appendant bodies to the Masonic Order include the Order of the Eastern Star, an organization for women who are wives, daughters, widows, mothers, and sisters of Masons. They support the Masons in their charities. The Order of Rainbow Girls, a Masonic youth and service organization that teaches leadership through the training of community service. Young women learn the value of charity and service. Order of De Malay, an organization for boys 12 to 21. Boys learn the purpose of developing civic service awareness, personal responsibility, and leadership skills. There's another Masonic fraternity that I would like to mention: Prince Hall Freemasonry. Prince Hall Freemasonry is a branch of North American Freemasonry for African Americans founded by Prince Hall on September the 29th, 1784. Prior to the American Revolutionary War, Prince Hall and 14 other free black men petitioned for admittance to the white St. John's Lodge in Boston. They were declined. The Masonic fraternity was attracted to free black like Prince Hall because Freemasonry was founded on ideals of liberty, equality, and peace. Having been rejected by colonial American Freemasonry, Hall and 14 others sought and were initiated to Masonry through the Lodge. Number 441 of the Grand Lodge of Ireland. They were attached to a military lodge in Boston. Hall and other freedmen founded African Lodge number 1, and he was elected master. When the military lodges left the area, they were given the authority to meet as a lodge, take part in Masonic processions on St. John's Day, and bury their dead with Masonic rites, but could not confer Masonic degrees or perform any other essential functions for a fully operating lodge. Unable to create a charter, they applied to the Premier Grand Lodge of England. The Grand Master of the Premier Grand Lodge of England was His Royal Highness the Duke of Cumberland, who issued a charter for African Lodge number 459 on September the 29th, 1784, later renamed African Lodge number 1. The lodge was the first African Masonic lodge. 6 years later, on March the 22nd, 1797, Prince Hall organized a lodge in Philadelphia called African Lodge Number 459 under Prince Hall's charter. They later received their own charter in 1797. By 1797, there were at least 34 members in the Boston Black Lodge, but still the lodge was overlooked by white Boston Masons. Integration with the American white Masons was not imminent since they were unable to obtain integration. The blacks concentrated on recognition from white Masons. That because black Masons descended from Prince Hall of Massachusetts and received its charter from the English Grand Lodge, it was a legitimate and not clandestine, and was entitled to all Masonic rights, such as intervisitation between black and white lodges without prejudice. Many Grand Masters hoped that ultimately recognition would lead to integration, but they knew it would be a long time before that happened. After being denied acknowledgement by the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, African Lodge declared itself to be an independent Grand Lodge, the African Grand Lodge of Massachusetts. In 1827, the African Grand Lodge declared its independence from the United Grand Lodge of England, as the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts had done 45 years earlier. It also stated its independence from all of the white Grand Lodges in the United States, declaring itself to be a separate Masonic body. This led to a tradition of separate, predominantly African American jurisdiction in North America, known collectively as Prince Hall Masonry. Widespread racial segregation in North America made it impossible for African Americans to join many predominantly white lodges, and most predominantly white Grand Lodges in North America refused to recognize the Prince Hall lodges. Beginning in the late 1900s, predominantly white Grand Lodges in the United States began to recognize the legitimacy of the Prince Hall counterparts meeting in the same states, though this was met with considerable resistance by members of, especially in southern states and among members of rural lodges. There are a few states that still lack such recognition. Recognition does not mean full integration, but it does mean that members. Okay. This will work?
Cross your fingers.
But does mean that the members of the two kinds of masonry can visit each other's lodges and engage in Masonic discourse freely. This is considered a step forward, but full integration is still considered unlikely. Today, Prince Hall affiliated Grand Lodges are recognized by the United Grand Lodge of England, as well as the overwhelming majority of U.S. state Grand Lodges, and even many international Grand Lodges. The situation is complicated by the level of recognition that is granted, with some lodges giving full blanket recognition to all Prince Hall Grand Lodges, while others put limits on regard to the issue. Today, in the state of Texas, several years ago, the Grand Lodge of Texas recognized Prince Hall as a legitimate and regular Grand Lodge, and we are able to visit back and forth, and East Trinity has one or more African American members, as does Fate Lodge and several other lodges around the state. Black members have been members in other Grand Lodges across the United States for several years. Today, predominantly black Prince Hall lodges exist in the original state jurisdiction of the United States. Additionally, Prince Hall jurisdictions have been established in Canada, the Caribbean, Liberia, and Brazil, governing Prince Hall lodges throughout the world. Lucille Cross Bell handed me a sheet of paper, and she said she wanted equal time. It's about the Order of the Eastern Star, which is one of the attendant bodies of the Grand Lodge. Dr. Morris and his wife Charlotte worked on the idea of the order and invited brother Masons and their wives to discuss the plans. In 1850, he worked on the degrees and themes, the heroines and names upon such work is based, established its signs, passages, colors, and emblems of the order, and the fundamental principles which have remained the same throughout the years. The first ritual was published under the title Rosary of the Eastern Star. Texas does not have any female members. Some of the other states do. In my research, I ran across one lady up in Ohio or someplace like that who was made a Master Mason because she had listened in on some of the lodge business. And they figured, well, you know, she knew everything there was to know, so they might as well make her a Mason. But some states do have female visitors. We, in the state of Texas, do not. The Order of the Eastern Star is very active in the state, and Lucille is very active in the Eastern Star chapter in Roy City. But I'd like to close by saying that every Mason, no matter his ethnicity, religion, or nationality, strives to live respected and die regretted. Thank you.